Hello and welcome back to English in Fluency. I am your host, Alex, and I am so incredibly happy that you have decided to join me today for what I believe is going to be one of our most important sessions yet. Today, we are going to tackle a problem that every single language learner faces, no matter where they are from or how long they have been studying. It is that sudden moment of silence. You know the one I am talking about. You are speaking with a native speaker, or perhaps another fluent English user, and everything is going well. But then they finish their sentence and look at you. They are waiting for a reaction. They are waiting for a response. In that split second, your mind goes completely blank. You know the vocabulary and you know the grammar, but the natural response just does not come. You might end up saying a simple yes or okay, or maybe you just nod your head and smile nervously. I want you to know that this is completely normal, but it is also something we can fix together right now. By the end of this massive session, you are going to have a toolkit of natural, confident responses that will make you sound like you have been speaking English your entire life. We are going to practice listening, but more importantly, we are going to practice the feeling of conversation. We will slow things down, analyze the hidden meanings behind simple phrases, and learn how to flow from one topic to another without that awkward panic. So, take a deep breath, relax your shoulders, and let's step into the world of natural English conversation. To begin, we need to understand that real English conversation is very different from textbook English. In a textbook, a dialogue usually follows a strict pattern like a tennis match. Player A hits the ball, and player B hits it back. Question, answer. Question, answer. But in real life, conversation is more like a dance. It involves emotion, hesitation, agreement, and surprise. Let's start with the most basic situation, which is running into someone you know but have not seen in a while. In school, we are taught to say, "How are you?" And the response is almost always, "I am fine, thank you, and you." While this is grammatically correct, it can sound a bit robotic and creates a wall between you and the other person, because it does not offer any new information. We are going to listen to a scenario now between two friends. Let's call them Leo and Maya. Leo is walking down a busy street and suddenly sees Maya coming out of a coffee shop. Listen closely, not just to the words they use, but to how they connect their ideas. Leo sees her and smiles broadly. He says, "Maya, I do not believe it. Is that you?" Maya looks up, surprised, and her face lights up. She responds, "Leo, oh my goodness. It has been ages. How have you been?" Now, pay attention to Leo's answer here. He does not say, "I am fine." Instead, he says, "You know, I can't complain. Work has been crazy, but good crazy. What about you? You look fantastic." Maya laughs and says, "Thank you. I am actually doing really well. I just started a new job last week, so I am a little tired, but I am loving it." Leo responds immediately with emotion. He says, "No way. That is awesome news. Congratulations. What is the job?" Let's pause right there and break this down because there is so much gold in that short interaction. First, notice the initial reaction. Leo did not just say, "Hello, Maya." He used a phrase of surprise. "I do not believe it." This is a wonderful B1 level phrase you can use whenever you see someone unexpectedly. It adds energy to the conversation immediately. Then Maya responds with, "It has been ages." This is a very common, natural way to say it has been a long time. It sounds much friendlier than the formal version. When Leo answers the question about how he is, he uses the phrase, "I can't complain." This is a beautiful phrase. It means things are generally good. It is humble and casual. It tells the listener that life is normal and acceptable. He adds detail by saying, "Work has been crazy." In English, when we say things are crazy in this context, we usually mean busy. But he clarifies it is a good crazy, meaning he is productive and happy, not stressed and angry. This brings us to a key lesson in sounding confident. You must give a little bit of extra information. If Leo had just said, "I am fine," the conversation would have stopped. But because he mentioned work was crazy, it gives the conversation a heartbeat. Maya does the same thing. She says she is doing well, but she adds the detail about the new job. This is the secret to fluency. Always add one small detail. Now, I want you to look at how Leo reacted to her news. He said, "No way. This is not a refusal." He is not saying no. In this context, "no way" is a phrase of shock and excitement. It means, "Really? Or is that true?" It is very high energy. Then he follows it up with, "That is awesome news." Notice he didn't just say, "Good." He said, "That is awesome news," using strong adjectives like awesome, amazing, or fantastic makes you sound more engaged and confident. Now imagine you are in Leo's shoes. You are talking to a friend who just told you they bought a new car. Instead of just saying, "Oh, nice car," try to channel that energy. You could say, "No way. That is incredible. What kind of car is it? Do you feel the difference?" The energy pulls the other person in. Let's move to another very common situation where learners often feel stuck. This is the scenario of making plans or invitations. Often, we feel pressured to say yes instantly, or if we have to say no, we sound too harsh or rude. We need to learn the art of the soft refusal and the enthusiastic acceptance. Let's listen to a conversation between two colleagues. Let's name them Sam and Elena. They are leaving the office at the end of the day. Sam catches the elevator door before it closes and sees Elena. He smiles and says, "Hey, Elena, glad I caught you. A few of us are heading over to the Italian place for dinner tonight. Do you want to come along?" Elena looks a bit hesitant. She shifts her bag on her shoulder and says, "Oh, that sounds so lovely, Sam. I would love to, really, but I promised my sister I would help her move some furniture tonight. I completely forgot until just now." Sam nods understandingly and says, "No worries at all. Family comes first? Maybe next time?" Elena smiles, relieved, and says, "Definitely. Count me in for next time. Have a great dinner, though." Let's analyze Elena's response. This is a masterclass in social grace. If she had just said, "No, I cannot. I am busy," it would have been grammatically correct, but it might have felt a bit cold or dismissive. Instead, she used a sandwich technique. First, she started with a positive appreciation. She said, "That sounds so lovely." This tells Sam that she likes the idea and she likes the group. It protects his feelings. Then she used the phrase, "I would love to, but." This is a phrase you should memorize immediately. I would love to, but. It is the perfect bridge between a compliment and a refusal. Then she gave the reason. She has to help her sister. This is the detail we talked about earlier. It makes her refusal real and understandable. Finally, she finishes with a wish for them to have a good time. Now look at Sam's reaction to her refusal. He says, "No worries at all." This is a very common B1 and B2 phrase. It means, "Do not worry about it," or "It is not a problem." He also says, "Family comes first." This is an idiom that shows he respects her priorities. This brief exchange shows that being fluent isn't just about words. It is about emotional intelligence conveyed through words. Let's practice this concept of softening your language to sound more natural. Imagine you are at a restaurant with a friend. The waiter brings you a dish, but it is not what you ordered. A beginner might shout, "This is wrong. I did not order this." But a confident, natural speaker would handle it differently to get a better result. Imagine a character named Daniel. Daniel looks at the plate, then looks at the waiter politely and says, "Excuse me, I think there might be a little mix-up. I actually ordered the chicken, but this looks like the fish." The waiter apologizes, and Daniel smiles and says, "No problem at all. I just wanted to let you know." Notice the words Daniel used. He said, "I think there might be." He is not accusing the waiter aggressively. He is suggesting a possibility. He calls it a little mix-up. A mix-up is a friendly word for a mistake. It sounds much less serious than saying, "You made an error." Then he uses the word actually. We mentioned this before. Actually is a powerful tool for correction. It signals that the reality is different from what is happening, but it does so without being aggressive. I actually ordered the chicken. If you can master using actually and mix-up, you will handle difficult situations with much more confidence. Now, let's go deeper into the mechanics of keeping a conversation going when you don't have much to say. This is often called active listening or back-channeling. In many cultures, listening means being quiet and letting the other person speak. But in English-speaking cultures, if you are completely silent, the speaker might think you are bored, confused, or that the phone line has been cut. You need to make sounds and short phrases to show you are there. We call these active listening signals. Let's observe a conversation between two neighbors, Oliver and Sophia. Oliver is telling a story about his weekend camping trip. Oliver starts, "So, we finally got to the campsite around midnight, and it was pitch black." Sophia's eyes widen, and she says, "Oh, wow, midnight? That is late?" Oliver continues, "Yeah, and we couldn't find the flashlights. We were stumbling around in the dark trying to set up the tent." Sophia leans in and says, "You are kidding. No flashlights?" Oliver laughs and says, "Seriously. We had to use the light from our phones, but my battery was dying." Sophia gasps and says, "Oh no, what a nightmare." "So what did you do?" I want you to count how many times Sophia spoke. She spoke 3 times, but she didn't really add new information. She was just reacting. This is the heartbeat of conversation. Let's look at her phrases. First, she used the echo technique. Oliver said midnight, and she repeated, "Midnight?" with a rising intonation. This is one of the easiest ways to sound fluent. You just take the most important keyword the other person said and repeat it as a question. It shows you are shocked or interested. Next, Sophia used the phrase, "You are kidding." This is similar to "no way." It expresses disbelief in a fun way. Finally, she used an empathetic phrase, "What a nightmare." We use this when something is frustrating or difficult. And notice her final move. She asked a checking question. "So what did you do?" This is the ultimate conversational glue. It hands the microphone back to the speaker. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about expressing opinions. This is another area where students often lack confidence because they are afraid of disagreement. They think they have to agree with everything to be polite. But natural conversation involves differing viewpoints. The key is, once again, how you deliver your opinion. We are going to listen to a discussion between two university students, Chloe and Ryan. They are talking about a movie they just watched. Chloe says, "I have to be honest, I didn't really enjoy the ending. I felt like it was too sad." Ryan looks thoughtful and responds, "I see what you mean. It was definitely heartbreaking, but I actually thought it was realistic. If it had a happy ending, it would have felt fake." Chloe nods slowly and says, "That is a fair point. I guess I just prefer movies that leave me feeling good." Ryan smiles and says, "I get that completely. Sometimes you just want an escape, right?" This conversation is a perfect example of a respectful disagreement. Chloe starts with, "I have to be honest." This is a great phrase to prepare the listener that you are going to say something negative or contradictory. It softens the blow. Then she states her opinion. Ryan disagrees, but he does not start with "no" or "you are wrong." He starts with validation. "I see what you mean." This is a magical phrase. It tells Chloe that he understands her perspective, even if he doesn't share it. He then uses "our friend actually" again to introduce his contrasting view. "I actually thought it was realistic." When Chloe responds to Ryan's point, she uses the phrase, "That is a fair point." This admits that Ryan's argument has logic. It shows respect. Then she clarifies her own preference using, "I guess, I just prefer." This makes her opinion subjective. She isn't saying the movie is bad, she is saying it doesn't match her personal taste. Now, let's introduce a new scenario involving asking for clarification. This is a huge fear for many learners. You are in a conversation, and suddenly you do not understand what the other person said. Maybe they spoke too fast, or maybe they used a word you don't know. The fear is that if you ask them to repeat, they will think your English is bad. But actually, confident speakers ask for clarification all the time. It shows you care about understanding the message. Let's hear a conversation between an employee, Mark, and his manager, Sarah. Sarah is giving instructions. She says, "Mark, I need you to compile the quarterly reports, cross-reference them with the logistics data, and have a preliminary draft on my desk by EOD." Mark looks a bit confused. He doesn't panic. He waits for a second and says, "I'm sorry, Sarah. Could you run that by me one more time? I want to make sure I didn't miss anything." Sarah smiles and says, "Of course. I need the quarterly reports checked against the logistics data." Mark nods and says, "Got it. And you said you needed it by EOD? What exactly does EOD stand for again?" Sarah replies, "Oh, sorry, end of day." So, by 5 p.m., Mark says, "Understood. Thanks for clarifying." Mark handled that perfectly. He used the phrase, "Could you run that by me one more time?" This is a very natural professional idiom, meaning, "Please repeat that." He also gave a reason. "I want to make sure I didn't miss anything." This frames his lack of understanding as a desire to be thorough and do a good job, not as a language failure. When he didn't know the acronym EOD, he asked directly, but politely, "What exactly does EOD stand for again?" Adding the word "again" at the end suggests that maybe he knew it once and forgot, which saves face. Let's try another scenario, something lighter. Let's talk about giving compliments. Compliments are a great way to start a conversation or make someone feel good, but we want to move beyond, "You look nice." We want specific, genuine compliments. Let's listen to two friends, Lucas and Emma, meeting at a park. Lucas sees Emma and says, "Emma, wow, I love that jacket. The color really brings out your eyes." Emma looks down at her jacket and smiles. She says, "Oh, this old thing? I've had it for years. But thank you. That is so sweet of you to say." Lucas adds, "Seriously, it looks great. And did you do something different with your hair? It looks really stylish." Emma laughs and touches her hair. She says, "I actually just got it cut yesterday. I wasn't sure if I liked it, so I am really glad you noticed." Here, Lucas is being very specific. He doesn't just say he likes the jacket. He says the color brings out her eyes. To bring out something means to highlight it or make it look better. This is a high-level compliment. Then he notices her hair. Notice how he asks, "Did you do something different?" This is a safe way to ask about a change if you aren't exactly sure what changed. It allows Emma to explain. Emma's response is also very natural. She deflects the compliment slightly at first. "Oh, this old thing," which is a humble way to accept praise, but then she accepts it warmly. We have covered greetings, refusals, active listening, disagreements, clarification, and compliments. Now, let's do one more short practice before we move deeper. This is about ending a conversation. This can be just as awkward as starting one. You don't want to just walk away, but you also don't want to be stuck talking forever. The key is the pre-closing signal. Let's listen to Jason and Kevin. They have been talking for 20 minutes. Jason looks at his watch and says, "Listen, Kevin, it has been great catching up with you, but I should probably get going. I have a meeting in 20 minutes. Kevin nods and says, "Yeah, me too. I've got a mountain of work waiting for me." It was really good to see you, Jason. Jason starts walking backward slightly and says, "Let's not leave it so long next time, all right?" Kevin agrees, "Absolutely. I'll text you. Take care." Jason waves and says, "You too. See ya." Jason used the word "listen" to signal a change in tone. Then he gave a positive summary. "It has been great catching up." Then he used the transition word, but followed by the exit phrase, "I should probably get going." The word probably softens it. He isn't running away. He just has to go. Having established these fundamental basics of interaction, we are going to build on that foundation. We are going to move from simple exchanges to something a bit more complex. Storytelling. You might think storytelling is only for authors or movie directors, but the truth is, we tell stories every single day. When you tell your partner about your day at work, that is a story. Today, we are going to learn how to add color, emotion, and suspense to your daily anecdotes. We will also look at how to handle interruptions and how to change the subject smoothly without being rude. Let's start with a scenario involving two friends. Let's call them Ben and Tara. Ben has just returned from a weekend trip that did not go exactly as planned. Listen to how he sets up the story. He does not just start with the facts. He starts with a hook. A hook is a sentence that makes the listener want to know more. Ben sits down, sighs loudly, and says, "You are not going to believe what happened to us this weekend." Tara immediately leans in and asks, "Why? Was it a disaster? I thought you were going to the beach." Ben shakes his head and says, "It was supposed to be a beach trip. But, long story short, we never actually made it to the beach. We spent the whole time in a mechanic's garage." Tara's eyes widen and she says, "Oh no, are you serious? The car broke down?" Ben replies, "Yeah, right in the middle of nowhere. We were driving along, singing along to the radio, having a great time, and then suddenly there was this loud bang and smoke started coming out of the hood." Let's pause and look at the structure Ben used here. He started with, You are not going to believe what happened. This is a classic hook. It demands attention. If he had just said, "My car broke down this weekend," Tara might have just said, "Oh, that is too bad." But by framing it as a mystery, he creates engagement. Notice also his use of the phrase, "long story short." This is a very common idiom. We use it when we want to skip the boring details and get to the main point quickly. It signals to the listener that you value their time. Then, look at how he describes the event. He uses the past continuous tense to set the scene. We were driving. We were singing. This paints a picture of happiness before the disaster. Then he uses the word suddenly to introduce the problem. This contrast between the happy background and the sudden problem is what makes a story interesting. Now, let's listen to how the conversation continues and how Tara reacts. Tara says, "That sounds terrifying. What did you do? Did you have phone service?" Ben nods and says, "Barely. We had 1 bar of signal. I tried to call a tow truck, but the call kept dropping. Honestly, I was starting to panic a little bit. But then, this random guy in a pickup truck pulled over. It turns out he was a mechanic. Can you imagine the odds?" Tara smiles and says, "Wow, talk about lucky. So he fixed it right there?" Ben laughs and says, "Not exactly. He towed us to his shop, which was actually his barn. But he was the nicest guy. He even made us lunch while we waited. So it was a disaster, but it was also kind of an adventure." In this second part, pay attention to the emotional words. Tara says, "That sounds terrifying." She is validating his feelings. Ben admits, "I was starting to panic." Sharing your internal feelings makes the story more human. If you just give facts, you are a reporter. If you share feelings, you are a friend. To practice this, think about something that happened to you recently. Instead of listing the events, try to start with a hook. Say, "You won't believe who I saw yesterday," or "The craziest thing happened this morning." Then, set the scene with past continuous. "I was walking to the bus stop," and then introduce the event with suddenly. Finally, tell the listener how you felt. "I was so embarrassed," or "I was so relieved." This simple structure, hook, scene, sudden event, feeling, will transform your English storytelling. Now, let's move to a different aspect of conversation. The art of interruption. In a perfect world, we would take turns speaking. But in reality, people interrupt each other all the time. Sometimes it is rude, but often it is just enthusiasm. You need to know how to handle it when someone interrupts you, and how to interrupt someone else politely if you need to speak. Let's listen to a meeting scenario between 2 colleagues, Julian and Nora. They are brainstorming ideas for a marketing project. The energy is high, and they are speaking quickly. Julian is speaking. "So, I was thinking we could launch the campaign on Instagram first, because that is where our target audience is, and we could maybe use some influencers to—" Nora jumps in. "Sorry to interrupt, Julian, but I think TikTok might be better than Instagram for this specific age group." Julian stops, thinks for a second, and says, "That is a fair point, but hang on a second. Let me finish my thought about the influencers, because I think it applies to both platforms." Nora nods and says, "Okay, go ahead. I want to hear it." Julian continues, "Thanks. Basically, I was going to say that regardless of the platform, we need authentic voices, not just polished ads. This exchange is very healthy." Nora interrupted, but she did it politely. She used the phrase, "Sorry to interrupt, but." This acknowledges that she is breaking the flow. Julian handled the interruption with confidence. He did not get angry, but he also did not let his idea die. He used the phrase, "Hang on a second." This is a casual but firm way to say, "Wait." He also said, "Let me finish my thought." This is a powerful phrase for B1 and B2 learners. You have the right to finish your sentences. If someone cuts you off, you can calmly say, "Can I just finish my point?" Or, "Just a moment, I haven't finished yet." Julian then validated Nora's interruption by saying, "That is a fair point," before returning to his own idea. This shows respect. He is saying, "I heard you, but I need to speak first." Now imagine a different situation where you need to interrupt because you simply do not understand. You are listening to a lecture or a long explanation, and you are lost. You cannot let the speaker continue because you will only get more confused. Let's listen to a student, Liam, talking to his professor, Dr. Aris. Dr. Aris is speaking rapidly, and therefore, the correlation between the variable x and the variable y suggests a deviation in the statistical norm, which brings us to the second theory of... Liam raises his hand slightly and says, "Excuse me, Professor. Sorry to cut in, but I lost you at deviation. Could you explain that part one more time simply?" Dr. Aris stops and smiles. "Ah, apologies. I was going a bit fast. Let me rephrase that." Liam used the phrase, "sorry to cut in." To cut in means to enter the conversation or interrupt. It is a very natural phrasal verb. He was honest about his confusion. "I lost you at deviation." This is much better than pretending to understand. Let's shift our focus to another conversational skill: changing the subject. Sometimes a conversation hits a dead end, or the topic becomes uncomfortable, or you just remember something important you wanted to say. You cannot just switch topics randomly, or you will sound disjointed. You need a bridge. We call these bridge phrases. Let's listen to two friends, Sophie and Ethan, having coffee. They are talking about the weather, which is a very common but boring topic. Sophie says, "Honestly, this rain is never going to stop. It has been gray for 3 weeks. Ethan stirs his coffee and says, "I know. It is so depressing. I just want to see the sun." Speaking of sun, did you hear that Maya is moving to Spain next month? Sophie looks surprised. "No way. Spain? That is amazing for her. Why is she moving?" Did you hear the bridge? Ethan used the phrase, "speaking of." This is the classic way to link two topics. He took the word sun from the boring conversation about rain and used it to link to Spain, which is a sunny country. This makes the change of subject feel natural and logical, even though the topics are quite different. Here is another example. Let's say you are talking about food, and you want to talk about a movie you saw. How do you connect them? Let's listen to Chloe and Daniel. Chloe says, "This pizza is actually really good. I love the extra cheese." Daniel replies, "Yeah, it is delicious. By the way, speaking of good things, have you seen that new comedy on Netflix? The one everyone is talking about?" Chloe laughs. "That is a bit of a random jump, but no, I haven't. Is it good?" Daniel used the phrase, "by the way." This is your universal tool. You can use "by the way" to introduce almost any new topic. Now, let's deepen our practice on sounding natural by looking at vagueness and placeholders. Native speakers are rarely 100% precise all the time. In fact, being too precise can sometimes sound robotic. We often use words that mean and other similar things. We call these vague language or placeholders. Common examples are stuff, things, and all that. Let's listen to a conversation between a mother, Grace, and her teenage son, Leo, about cleaning his room. Grace stands at the door and says, "Leo, your room is a mess. There are clothes, books, and stuff all over the floor. You need to tidy up." Leo sighs and says, "I know, Mom. I was just organizing my school project. I have to sort out the papers, the glue, the markers, and everything. I'll do it in a bit." Grace says, "Well, just make sure you put your laundry in the basket and clear your desk and all that before dinner." Notice the vague language. Grace says clothes, books, and stuff. Stuff covers the toys, the papers, the socks. Leo says markers and everything. Grace says clear your desk and all that. This little phrase, "and all that means," and the other usual tasks associated with this, it sounds relaxed and fluent. Another type of vague language is used when we can't remember the name of something. We use words like thingy, whatchamacallit, or what's his name. Let's hear two friends, Hannah and Isaac, trying to remember a movie actor. Hannah says, "You know who I mean. The guy who was in that spy movie. The tall one with the British accent." Isaac frowns. "Who? James Bond?" Hannah says, "No, no. The other one. What's his name? He was in that movie with the thingy, the exploding car." Isaac laughs. "You are going to have to be more specific." Hannah snaps her fingers. "Henry Cavill. That is his name." Hannah used "what's his name" to show she knows he has a name, but she can't access it. She used thingy to describe the car scene because she couldn't find the right word. Native speakers do this constantly. If you forget a word, don't freeze. Don't panic. Just use a placeholder. Let's move on to a slightly more advanced but very useful topic: speculating and showing uncertainty. As a learner, you might feel you always need to be correct. But in conversation, we often guess. We use phrases like, "I reckon," "I suppose," "I guess," or "it looks like." These phrases soften your statements and make you sound less dogmatic. Let's listen to two colleagues, Olivia and Ryan, looking out the window at the sky. Olivia says, "Look at those clouds. It looks like it is going to pour down any minute." Ryan nods and says, "Yeah, I reckon you are right. I guess we should cancel the outdoor lunch, huh?" Olivia says, "I suppose so, unless we want to get soaked. It is a shame, though. I was really looking forward to it." "Here," Olivia says. "It looks like." She isn't a meteorologist. She is speculating based on visual evidence. Ryan uses "I reckon." This is a very common British and Australian phrase, but it is understood everywhere. It means "I think" or "I believe." It sounds very casual and friendly. Now, I want to address a very common problem: the awkward silence. We talked about this in the intro, but let's look at how to fill silence comfortably. Sometimes silence is okay, but if it feels too long, you can use observation or open-ended questions to restart the engine. Let's listen to two acquaintances, Mark and Sarah, waiting for an elevator. The silence is getting long. Mark looks at the elevator numbers changing slowly. He clears his throat and says, "Slow elevator today, isn't it?" Sarah laughs a little too loudly and says, "Tell me about it. It always seems to be slow when you are in a rush." Mark smiles and says, "So true. Are you heading out for lunch or just running an errand?" Sarah says, "Just grabbing a coffee. I need a caffeine boost to get through the afternoon. How about you?" Mark broke the silence with a shared observation. He commented on something they were both experiencing: the slow elevator. This is the safest way to break ice. Talk about the environment. We have moved from simple greetings to telling stories with hooks and feelings. We have learned to handle interruptions with grace. We have learned to use bridge phrases like speaking of and by the way to change topics. We have practiced using vague language like stuff and thingy to sound relaxed. But now, we are going to step into a slightly different world. We are going to leave the coffee shop and the park, and we are going to step into the office, the hotel lobby, and the formal meeting room. We are entering the world of professional and transactional English. Many learners feel a lot of anxiety here. They worry that if they are too casual, they will sound unprofessional. But if they are too formal, they will sound like a robot. The secret is finding the balance. You want to sound polite, but also human. Let's start with one of the most fundamental shifts you need to make when moving from casual to professional English. The art of indirect requests. In casual English with your best friend, you might say, "Give me the salt," or "Help me with this." It is direct and efficient. But in a professional setting, directness can sometimes be interpreted as aggression or bossiness. To sound polite and confident, we use what we call modal verbs and indirect phrases. Let's listen to a scenario in an office between two colleagues, Michael and Jessica. Michael needs Jessica to check a report for him, but he knows she is very busy. Michael approaches Jessica's desk. He doesn't just say, "Jessica, check this report." Instead, he knocks lightly on her partition and says, "Hi, Jessica, do you have a quick moment?" Jessica looks up from her computer and sighs, looking stressed. She says, "I am actually swamped right now, Michael. Is it urgent?" Michael notices her stress and softens his voice. He says, "I completely understand. I wouldn't ask, but I have to submit the quarterly analysis by noon. I was wondering if you could possibly cast your eye over the summary section. It would really help me out." Jessica relaxes a little because he was so polite. She says, "Okay, if it is just the summary, I can do that. Send it over." Michael smiles and says, "You are a lifesaver. I really appreciate it." Let's break down the magic in Michael's request. He used a phrase that is absolute gold for B1 and B2 learners. "I was wondering if you could possibly..." This is a very long phrase just to say, "Please do this," but the length is what makes it polite. It creates distance between the speaker and the demand. It gives Jessica the space to say no without feeling bad. He also used the idiom "cast your eye over." This sounds much less like work than read or edit. It suggests a quick look. It minimizes the burden on Jessica. Finally, he used the phrase, "You are a lifesaver." This is a great professional compliment when someone helps you out of a tight spot. It creates a bond of gratitude. So, practice this structure. I was wondering if I could borrow your pen. I was wondering if you could help me move this table. It instantly upgrades your English level. Let's move to a situation that everyone dreads: making a complaint. Whether you are at a hotel, a restaurant, or dealing with a service provider, things go wrong. The natural reaction is to get angry and say, "This is bad. Fix it." But in English-speaking cultures, we often get better results if we frame the complaint as a shared problem that we need help solving. We use softeners to deliver bad news. Let's listen to a traveler, Arthur, checking into a hotel. He enters his room and realizes it smells like cigarette smoke, even though he asked for a non-smoking room. Arthur goes back down to the reception desk. He does not shout. He approaches the receptionist, Linda, and smiles politely. He says, "Hi, Linda. I am afraid there is a slight issue with my room." Linda looks concerned and asks, "Oh dear, what seems to be the problem, sir?" Arthur leans in confidentially and says, "Well, I requested a non-smoking room, but the room I was given seems to have a very strong smell of smoke. It is a bit overpowering, actually. Would it be possible to move to a different room?" Linda checks her computer and says, "I am so sorry about that, sir. Let me check availability. Yes, I have a room on the top floor. It should be much fresher." Arthur smiles and says, "That would be brilliant. Thank you for sorting that out so quickly." Arthur used the phrase, "I am afraid." We use this phrase all the time in service situations to introduce a problem or a refusal. It doesn't mean he is scared. It means, "I am sorry to tell you this negative thing." It softens the blow. Then, he called it a slight issue. Even if the room smells terrible, calling it a slight issue makes him sound reasonable and calm. It makes Linda want to help him because he isn't attacking her. He describes the smell as a bit overpowering. Again, the word "a bit" makes the complaint sound less aggressive, even though overpowering is a strong word. Finally, he asks, "Would it be possible to move?" instead of "move me now." This allows Linda to be the hero who solves the problem. Now, let's tackle the beast that is telephone English. Speaking on the phone is harder than speaking in person because you cannot see the other person's lips or their facial expressions. You lose 70% of the communication signals. This is why you need specific verbal signals to replace the visual ones. You need to show you are listening, check for understanding, and manage the flow of information explicitly. Let's listen to a phone call between a client, Tom, and a supplier, Rachel. Tom is calling to change an order quantity. The phone rings and Rachel answers, "Good morning, Apex Supplies," Rachel speaking. "How can I help you?" Tom says, "Hi, Rachel. This is Tom from Green Start Solutions. I am calling regarding the order we placed last Tuesday." Rachel types on her keyboard and says, "Hi, Tom. Ideally, yes, I have that order right here. What can I do for you?" Tom says, "Well, we actually need to increase the quantity of the paper units. We need 500 instead of 300. Rachel pauses and says, "Okay, let me just check if we have that in stock. Could you hold on a moment?" Tom says, "Sure, take your time." Rachel comes back, "Thanks for holding, Tom. Yes, we can do that. So, just to recap, that is 500 units of the A4 paper, correct?" Tom says, "Spot on. Thanks, Rachel." There are several key telephone phrases here. First, notice how Tom introduces himself. He says, "This is Tom." On the phone, we never say, "I am Tom." We always use "this is." Then, he states the purpose of his call clearly. "I am calling regarding." This helps Rachel orient herself immediately. When Rachel needs to check the stock, she asks, "Could you hold on a moment?" She doesn't just go silent. You must tell the caller what you are doing. If you need to find a document, say, "Bear with me a second while I find that file." "Bear with me" is a lovely phrasal verb that means, "Please be patient." When Rachel returns, she says, "Thanks for holding." Then she uses a checking technique. Just to recap, this is crucial on the phone. Because the connection might be bad or accents might be difficult, you should always summarize the important details at the end. Tom confirms with "spot on." Let's shift gears to the meeting room. How do you disagree with a boss or a colleague without getting fired or starting a fight? In many cultures, disagreeing with a superior is seen as disrespectful. In English-speaking business culture, it is often encouraged, provided you do it diplomatically. The goal is to attack the idea, not the person. We use the yes but technique, or what we call validation followed by a counterpoint. Let's listen to a strategy meeting between a manager, Sarah, and her team member, David. Sarah says, "I think we should cut the marketing budget for Q4 and put that money into product development." David knows this is a bad idea because sales will drop. He takes a breath and says, "I see where you are coming from, Sarah. Product development is definitely a priority right now. However, I have some concerns that if we cut marketing completely, we might lose our visibility in the market. Maybe we could look at a smaller reduction instead?" Sarah listens and nods. "That is a valid point, David. I hadn't thought about the visibility impact. What percentage reduction would you suggest?" David handled this perfectly. He started with validation. "I see where you are coming from." This tells Sarah, "I am not calling you stupid. I understand your logic." Then he used the transition word, however, instead of but. However sounds slightly more professional and soft. He introduced his disagreement with the phrase, "I have some concerns." This makes it about the project, not about his personal feelings. He didn't say, "I disagree." He said, "I have concerns." Finally, he offered a compromise. "Maybe we could look at a smaller reduction." He turned a no into a suggestion. Now, let's look at the ultimate test of professional confidence: the job interview, or even just introducing yourself at a networking event. The most common question is, "Tell me about yourself." This seems simple, but many people ramble on about their childhood or their hobbies. The secret to a confident answer is the past, present, future formula. You talk briefly about your relevant background, what you are doing now, and what you want to achieve next. Let's listen to a candidate, Maria, answering this question. The interviewer says, "So, Maria, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?" Maria smiles confidently. She sits up straight and says, "Brave, certainly. Well, I have a background in digital marketing, having spent the last 3 years managing social media campaigns for a retail fashion brand. Currently, I am leading a small team of content creators where we focus on video engagement. I am really proud of the work we have done, but I am now looking to move into a more strategic role where I can utilize my analytic skills, which is why I was so excited about this opportunity with your company." Maria didn't talk about her cat or where she went to high school. She stuck to the formula. Past, I have a background in having spent 3 years doing X. Present, currently, I am leading. Future, I am now looking to move into. This structure makes you sound organized and goal-oriented. It tells a story of growth. Notice she also used positive adjectives like proud and excited. Don't be afraid to show enthusiasm. Employers hire people who want the job. Let's practice a checking understanding scenario. This happens in meetings, on calls, and in interviews. You need to make sure you got the details right. Let's listen to Kevin and his boss, Alan. Alan has just given a very complicated set of instructions about a new software rollout. Alan finishes speaking. "So the server migration needs to happen on Friday night, but only after the backup is verified, and we need the Alpha team on standby in case of a rollback." Kevin nods slowly and says, "Okay, Alan. Just to make sure we are on the same page, you want the migration to start Friday, but strictly conditional on the backup verification? And the Alpha team needs to be physically present or just on call?" Alan says, "Exactly. And they just need to be on call, but reachable within 10 minutes. Kevin says, Understood. I will communicate that to them immediately. Kevin used the phrase, just to make sure we are on the same page. This is a fantastic idiom. It means, let's ensure we have a shared understanding. He then repeated the key conditions in his own words. This is called paraphrasing. We have covered requests, complaints, phone calls, disagreements, and interviews. But there is one final frontier we need to explore. This is the area where true fluency lives. It is the ability to express your heart, your deepest thoughts, and your complex opinions. It is the difference between saying, I am sad, and I have been feeling a bit down lately. It is the difference between saying, I disagree, and I think there is another way to look at this issue. In this final section, we are going to learn how to connect with others on an emotional level, how to support friends in difficult times, and how to discuss big social issues without losing your cool. This is the bridge to advanced English. So, open your mind, relax, and let's dive into the deep end of conversation. We will begin with the language of empathy and support. One of the most common situations in close friendships is when someone shares bad news or a personal struggle. As a learner, you might freeze because you are afraid of saying the wrong thing. You might just say, "Don't worry," which is kind of you, but it can feel a bit dismissive. We want to use phrases that validate the other person's pain. Let's listen to a conversation between two close friends, Julia and Mark. Mark has just gone through a difficult breakup. Mark is sitting on a bench, looking at the ground. He sighs and says, "Honestly, Julia, I just don't know what to do with myself. It feels like there is this huge empty space in my life now. I keep checking my phone, expecting a text that isn't going to come." Julia sits quietly next to him. She doesn't rush to give advice. She says gently, "I can only imagine how hard that must be for you, Mark. It is completely natural to feel that void. You were together for a long time." Mark nods and wipes his eyes. He says, "Yeah, it is just—" The silence in the apartment is the worst part. Julia puts a hand on his shoulder and says, "I hear you. Look, there is no timeline for this. You don't have to get over it today. Just take it 1 hour at a time. And remember, I am here for whatever you need, even if it is just to sit in silence." Listen to the phrases Julia used. She started with, "I can only imagine how hard that must be." This is a perfect phrase when you haven't experienced the exact same thing, but you want to show empathy. It is humble. She also said, "It is completely natural to feel that void." This is called validation. She is telling Mark that he isn't crazy. His feelings are normal. Then she used the phrase, "I hear you." This is much deeper than "I understand." It means, I am emotionally present with you. Finally, she gave him permission to be sad. There is no timeline for this. In English, when we support someone, we often try to remove the pressure they feel. We say things like, "Take all the time you need," or "Don't be so hard on yourself." Let's move from sadness to the complex world of debating and expressing controversial opinions. In B1 and B2 English, you learn to state facts. But to sound truly fluent, you need to be able to discuss abstract ideas, topics like technology, environment, or society, without getting aggressive. We use what we call softeners and distance language. Let's listen to a dinner party conversation between three people, Sarah, David, and Leo. They are discussing the impact of social media on teenagers. Sarah starts the topic. She says, "Personally, I feel like social media is doing more harm than good these days. I mean, look at the anxiety rates among teenagers. It is alarming. David nods but offers a counterpoint. He says, I see your point, Sarah, and I definitely agree that there are risks. But on the other hand, we have to consider the connectivity it brings. For a lot of kids, it is their only way to find a community, especially if they feel isolated in real life. Leo jumps in and says, that is a fair argument, David. But I tend to think that the quality of those online connections is superficial. If I had to choose, I would argue that face-to-face interaction is irreplaceable. I worry we are losing the ability to read body language. Notice how they disagree. Sarah starts with, personally, I feel like. Or, these are starter phrases that signal, this is just my opinion, not a fact. David uses the classic structure, I see your point. But on the other hand, this phrase, on the other hand, is essential for showing you can look at two sides of a coin. Leo uses the phrase, I tend to think. This makes his opinion sound like a tendency rather than a hard rule. He also uses a hypothetical structure. If I had to choose, I would argue that this is the second conditional. It creates a safe, hypothetical space for the argument. Now, let's explore the second and third conditionals in more detail, because these are the grammar structures that unlock hypothetical fluency. We often bond with people by talking about things that are not real. Dreams, regrets, and what-if scenarios. Let's listen to two colleagues, Sam and Nina, dreaming about winning the lottery. This is a classic second conditional conversation, imaginary, present, future. Sam leans back in his chair and says, God, I am tired. If I won the lottery tomorrow, I think I would quit my job instantly. I would buy a sailboat and just travel around the Mediterranean. What about you? Nina laughs and says, that sounds amazing. Honestly, if I were rich, I don't think I would quit working entirely. I think I would get bored, but I would definitely hire a personal chef. Imagine never having to cook dinner again. That would be the dream. Sam laughs. Yeah, I could get used to that. Notice the grammar. If I won, past simple, I would quit. Would plus verb. If I were rich. We often use were instead of was for all subjects in the second conditional to sound more formal or correct. Nina says, that would be the dream. She isn't talking about reality. She is talking about a feeling. Now, let's look at the third conditional, talking about past regrets. This is used for deep, late-night conversations. Let's listen to an older couple, Arthur and Martha, looking at old photos. Arthur points to a photo of a young man with a guitar. He says, you know, sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had pursued music instead of accounting. I might have been a rock star. Martha smiles and squeezes his hand. She says, maybe. But if you had become a rock star, we probably wouldn't have met. You would have been touring the world, and I was just a librarian in a small town. Arthur smiles back. He says, you are right. In that case, I am glad I didn't pursue it. I wouldn't trade this life for anything. This is advanced grammar used naturally. What would have happened if I had pursued? If plus past perfect would have plus past participle. It sounds complicated in a textbook, but in conversation, it flows like a story. Let's shift to a very positive emotion, expressing excitement and joy. Sometimes, I am happy isn't enough. You want to show enthusiasm. Let's listen to a conversation between a student, Chloe, and her mentor, Dr. Evans. Chloe has just been accepted into her dream university. Chloe bursts into the office. She is beaming. She says, "Dr. Evans, you are not going to believe this. I got in. I actually got into Oxford." Dr. Evans stands up and says, "Chloe, that is absolutely phenomenal. I am over the moon for you. You worked so hard for this." Chloe says, "I am still in shock. Honestly, I am buzzing." I tried to call my mom, but my hands were shaking so much I dropped the phone. It feels surreal. Look at the vocabulary of joy. I am over the moon. I am extremely happy. That is phenomenal. Better than good, better than great. I am buzzing. I have so much energy I can't sit still. It feels surreal. It feels like a dream. When you share good news, don't hold back. Now, let's tackle a nuanced social skill. The diplomatic no to an invite you actually want to accept but can't. Or dealing with uncertainty. This is about managing expectations. Scenario: a friend invites you to a wedding, but you are not sure if you can get time off work. Friend: "Hey, we are sending out invites for the wedding in July. Can you make it?" You, the learner: "I am not sure. This is too short." You, the fluent speaker: "Oh, I wouldn't miss it for the world. I honestly can't wait. The thing is, I have to clear the dates with my boss because July is our busy season. But I am going to do everything I can to be there. Can I let you know by Friday?" "I wouldn't miss it for the world" is a beautiful phrase. It means, I really want to go. "The thing is a great bridge phrase to introduce a problem. This response makes the friend feel loved, even though you haven't said yes yet. Let's bring all these elements together, empathy, debate, conditionals, and joy, into a final big-picture concept: the importance of vulnerability. To be truly fluent, you have to be willing to make mistakes and admit when you don't know something. Let's listen to a final dialogue between two English learners, Maria and Kenji. They are discussing their fear of speaking. Maria says, "You know, Kenji, sometimes I still get so nervous when I speak to native speakers. I feel like I am going to sound stupid." Kenji nods enthusiastically. He says, "I know exactly what you mean. It is like my brain freezes. But recently, I realized something. Most people are actually really kind. If I make a mistake, they usually just ignore it." Maria says, "That is true. I guess we are our own worst critics. If I were judging myself less, I would probably enjoy the conversation more." Kenji smiles and says, "Exactly. We just have to be brave enough to be imperfect. After all, communication is about connection, not perfection. We are our own worst critics." This is a profound idiom. It means we judge ourselves harder than anyone else does. Communication is about connection, not perfection. This is the motto of our channel, and it should be your motto too. As we reach the end of this massive script, I want to give you a final practice technique that integrates everything we have learned. It is called the daily review. Every night, before you go to sleep, I want you to have a small conversation with yourself in English. But I want you to go through 3 specific steps. The factual: what did I do today? Use past tense. I went to work. I had a salad. The emotional: how did I feel about it? Use adjectives. I felt exhausted but productive. The salad was surprisingly tasty. The hypothetical: what would I have done differently? Use conditionals. If I had left work earlier, I would have gone to the gym. If you do this every night, you are training your brain to move from B1, facts, to B2, feelings, to C1, abstract thought. You are building the neural pathways of a fluent speaker. We have come a long way. We started with hello and how are you? We learned to interrupt politely with sorry to cut in. We learned to tell stories with suddenly and long story short. We learned to be professional with I was wondering if. And today, we learned to open our hearts with I can only imagine and I am over the moon. You now have a toolkit of scenarios, phrases, and structures. But a toolkit is only useful if you pick up the tools and use them. Don't just listen to this script once. Listen to it in the car. Listen to it while you cook. Shadow the characters. Be Leo. Be Sarah. Be the person complaining about the smoky hotel room. Be the person comforting a sad friend. Act it out. English is not a subject you study. It is a sport you play. It is a song you sing. You have to get the rhythm in your body. I want to thank you, from the bottom of my heart, for trusting me with your time and your learning journey. Creating this series for you has been a privilege. Remember, every time you open your mouth to speak English, you are doing something brave. You are stepping into a new world. So, go out there. Make mistakes. Laugh at them. Ask for clarification. Tell your story. Share your feelings. And most importantly, believe in yourself. You are not just learning English, you are becoming a global citizen. I am Alex. This has been English in Fluency. The script ends here, but your conversation is just beginning. Good luck, take care, and keep speaking. Goodbye for now.